Nigeria's President Bola Tinubu has declared a state of emergency on food security. It is in response to the rising cost of foodstuff. Special advisor to the President, Dele Alake, announced measures to reverse inflation and ensure future supplies of affordable food. State House correspondent Adesuwa Omoruan reports for Arise News.
It is no longer news that Nigerians are grappling with high cost of food items. While availability is not an issue, it has become increasingly difficult for many to afford the hiking prices. The president's decision to remove subsidy on fuel has further aggravated an already precarious situation. To reverse the trend, President Bola Tinubu has declared a state of emergency on food security and announced a series of initiatives aimed at ensuring uninterrupted supplies of affordable foods for ordinary Nigerians. Among the key interventions are the immediate release of fertilizers and grains to farmers and households to mitigate the effects of subsidy removal, while the central bank will continue to play a pivotal role in funding the agricultural value chain.
Accordingly, and in line with this administration's position on ensuring that the most vulnerable are supported, the President has declared with immediate effect the following actions. 1. A state of emergency on food security. 2. That all matters pertaining to food and water availability and affordability as essential livelihood items be included within the purview of the National Security Council. As with most emergencies, there are immediate, medium, and long-term interventions and solutions. In the immediate term, this government intends to deploy some savings from the fuel subsidy removal into the agricultural sector, focusing on revamping the agri sector.
The message is that middlemen who have kept all these grains, because we'll be releasing everything we have in stock. So the message is that middlemen and those who are storing these things to create arbitrage and get profits, this is the best time to release it quickly, because once we release those paddy and the maize that the central bank has, your prices will be depressed.
In addition, the government plans to establish a national commodity board that will monitor and regulate food prices, ensuring fair pricing for consumers.
Through this board, government will moderate spikes and dips in food prices. As for storage, existing warehouses and tanks will be revamped to cut waste and ensure efficient preservation of food items. This government says it's going to do away with the old ways of livestock business. So livestock business is holistic, whether herders, grazers, whatever.
Efforts to facilitate trade and increase revenue from food and agricultural exports are also highlighted. The government aims to streamline customs processes and reduce transportation costs, benefiting both producers and consumers. With these interventions, the government hopes to not only address the immediate crisis, but also create employment opportunities in the agricultural sector. However, Nigerians eagerly await to see the implementation of these initiatives, hopeful they will bring more affordable food items for them. From the presidential villa, Adesuwa Omoruan, Arise News.
Thank you very much, Adesuwa Omoruan. Standing by in the Abuja studio to discuss the food shortage and other economic issues across Nigeria is Kenneths Ahaneku, General Managing Director and Chief Executive Officer at Neon Holdings, a Nigerian conglomerate with investment interests in strategic studies sectors of Nigeria's economy. He's also the chairman of Nigeria's Silo Concessioners Association. Welcome to This Day Live, Kenneth, and thank you very much for joining us. Okay. The President of Nigeria,
Dr. Ruben.
The President of Nigeria has declared a state of emergency with regard to food security in Nigeria. What does this mean to you as a chairman of the Silos Concessionaires group of Nigeria, as a major player in the food sector in Nigeria?
Okay, thank you once again, Dr. Ruben, and thank you for having me on your program. I usually watch this program from time to time, and I think it's good to connect with you once again. The last time we engaged was in 2021, when we had the challenge of banditry invasion of our farm in Niger State. You remember that incident led to loss of more than 3 billion naira of our investments, and that was 2021, if you remember. And in 2022, we lost another 700 million naira due to flooding. And this is well reported. But coming to the issue of the emergency declaration by the president, I think this is timely. If you remember, during his inaugural speech, he mentioned something. He said, there's going to be establishment of commodity exchange boards, which will work together with, and there will be establishment of storage facilities nationwide, if you remember. I think that is what connects with our association as the concessionaires for the silos across Nigeria. So let's talk a bit about what Dele Alake mentioned in his release. He said there is emergency declaration, for food, which will now be taken in the context of national security purview. Very relevant at this time, because to a large extent we've seen that the challenge we've had with food security has been as a result of insecurity. But beyond that, for us in the association, we're a group of silo concessionaires that worked with the Federal Ministry of Agric in 2018 for the privatization of the silos which are built and scattered across the countries. We have different silos in Sokoto, Zamfara, Bauchi, Akwa Ibom, Ogun State, Ekiti, Anambra, Imo State. So we have silos scattered across the country. So we, as an association, we are a group of members of about 7 to 10 companies that are in charge of these silos with a total storage capacity of about 700,000 metric tons capacity. So we can store grains ranging from rice paddy, maize, soybeans, millets, sorghums, and the rest. So when you talk about the declaration of emergency in the food sector and how it connects with us, it connects with us in the sense that we are the major player in ensuring food security in the context of the emergency declaration by the government. And I will tell you why. If you say you are declaring emergency in food security, there are issues to consider. Number one, do you have the farmland? Number two, do you have access to the farmland? Number three, do you have the storage facilities? Number four, do you have the markets? So these are some of the issues to consider. So in a way, government has talked about 500,000 hectares of land mapped for this emergency declaration, even though 500,000 hectares of land is not sufficient, but at least it's the starting point. So that's one. The second thing that is available is the storage facility, like I've talked about. So a combination of these two factors will definitely help government in realizing the aim of ensuring the food security that the government is talking about under this emergency declaration. But when you say you are declaring food security, emergency declaration for food security, for me, I would rather that government should not look at all categories of food. You could just say, okay, look, let's select a fraction. It could be, for this declaration, we want to select rice, maize, soybeans, and maybe wheat. Why do I suggest this? If you select maize and soybeans, adequate production of this grain will definitely help in providing food sufficiency, even for the poultry sector. Today, maize, for instance, we have a consumption level of about 15 million metric tons annually, whereas our level of production has declined from 2021, when we used to produce about 12 million metric tons, to less than 10 million metric tons presently. So we have a gap of about 5 million metric tons. So if we can address food sufficiency in the aspect of adequate supply of maize, so we can help to take care of problem in that sector and then deal with poultry sector. The same with soybean, because soybeans and maize production combined takes care of the poultry sector. Rice is a staple food for Nigerians. At present, we produce only about less than 5 million metric tons, whereas our consumption is more than 8 million metric tons. So again, a declaration in that sector that will enable the sufficient production of rice paddy will definitely help to produce enough for storage and to moderate prices in the context of Dele Alake's presentation.
Mr. Ahaneku, two quick things.
So yes, yes.
I just wanted you to talk about this food security. People like me will understand it.
Okay.
If we are able to buy Congo of rice at a cheaper rate. But there were two other things that the president talked about. He talked about commodity boards. And you have talked about these silos, and you are chairman of silos concessionaires. The other day, the president talked about releasing food from the National Grains Reserve, and you have been talking about metric tons. Is there food left in the National Grains Reserve? Has anybody released anything for the benefit of Nigerians? Or all of this is just radio talk? As chairman, you should know.
Truth of the matter, truth of the matter is that in terms of strategic food reserve, there are two aspects of it. We have strategic food reserve controlled by the federal government through the Ministry of Agriculture and Rural Development. So they have some silos under their control. And they do have grains, maize, soybean, and all that. So yes, from time to time, there's release of grains. But beyond the one controlled by government is what we do under the private sector-led and coordinated, silo concession and silo management, which is the one we control under the private sector. Now, talking about what we do in the context of the national board for commodities, as you talked about, yes, it can work. Now, how would that work? It is for government to say you establish a commodity board. That commodity board will work in tandem with the silo concessionaires. So we bring in the silos as the storage space for grains. So it depends on which sort of grains that the commodity bonds will start with. The commodity board will start with. Like I said, they can start with rice, maize, soybeans, wheat. For these four classes of commodities, we can bring in the storage facilities. So what happens is that government can support farmers to farm these grains. When these grains are farmed and they are harvested, there are some part of it that will go into the market right away. The excess is then stored in our silos. So we provide storage facilities. So what government does is that government will now buy up this excess through the commodity exchange and store in our silos. So from time to time, government will then begin to release these grains into the market in moderation of the prices, so that, just like you talked about buying conco of rice at regulated price, so you now see that the prices are moderated in such a way that you can now begin to buy rice at less than 30,000 naira per 50 kg 50 kg bag, and all sorts. So with that, prices will become greatly, moderated. That's how I think we can work with government. Yes.
Chairman Silos Concerners of Nigeria, you've talked about the role of the private sector. Now, what most Nigerians know is that national security, insecurity is a major challenge for the average Nigerian farmer. President Tinubu, in talking about food security, talked about, placing these initiatives about food security under the purview of the Office of the National Security Advisor. Do you, private sector, players in the food sector in Nigeria, do you consider insecurity a major challenge? And do you think that the move by the president would protect your interest with regard to security? Maybe you two are looking at being given some buses, maybe from the palliatives. Maybe you want some buses to facilitate your operation.
Dr. Ruben, I think it was a very wise move for government to bring this issue of food security under the National Security Council. It's a very wise initiative, and I'll tell you why. I gave the example of what happened to us in Bobi, Niger State, when where we, in partnership with the Central Bank of Nigeria, were supposed to undertake, or we started the project of backward integration for dairy projects. And in 2021, banditry invasion led to the loss of our investment and even loss of more than 9 precious Nigerian lives. So to that extent, you find out that when security is improved at farm site, definitely it will help the farmers have access to their farmland, support them, preserve them, protect them in ensuring that food production is engaged on. We are not forgetful of the reports that have happened in some parts of Nigeria. In Benue State, we have heard stories of how farmers were beheaded for having access to their farmland. We've had reports of where farmers in Zamfara are told to pay some token to bandits before they will have access to their farmland, and some of these farmers are not able to pay up. So what happens? You find situations where they are kidnapped or killed. So to that extent, the government coming up with this initiative to bring issue of security, bring the issue of food security under the whole gamut of national security architecture is a very wise move. And I think to a large extent it will help to improve the confidence of farmers in returning back to farmland, and by extension improving the quantity of food supply, and then ultimately support government's initiative for increasing the availability of food supply nationwide. I think it's a wise move by government, yes.
Are you saying that in the long run, because we need to go now, Mr. Kenneth Ahaneku, you think government policy is likely to help us bring down the market price of tomato, onion, bread, and all these staple foods that have gone through the sky? During Salah, most people could not buy a ram because the ram sellers were quoting foreign exchange. Are you very optimistic?
Dr. Ru, yes, I think to a large extent, we should be optimistic. I think we should be optimistic, and I'll tell you why. You see, for the very fact that the government has even come up with this initiative, and if you look at the release by Dele Alake, it's a very well-articulated plan. Very well-articulated. But whether they will be able to implement what they have set out to do is another kettle of fish entirely. So hopefully, but like I said, I don't think in one fell swoop, government should take all the food items together. They could just pick some of them and begin to implement, set goals, give time frames, and begin to see how some of the policy implementation lead to desired outcomes. Government should indeed set targets. You can say, look, in the next 6 months, we want to reach this volume of output for maize, we want to reach this volume of output for rice paddy, this volume of output for soybean. By the time you reach that, you can then pick another, begin to implement this policy step by step in a very sustainable manner in partnership with private sector. It has to be a private sector-led implementation strategy. That's what I think. And I think with that, we should be optimistic and be hopeful. What government is doing will definitely lead to desired outcome.
Okay, on that note, I would like to thank you very much, Mr. Kenneth Ahaneku, GMD CEO, Neon Holdings, and the chairman of the Silos Concessionaires Association of Nigeria. Thank you very much for joining us on this Live, this Sunday Talk Show.